society out there. Open the doors for my people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors for the people of society out there. So many rivers running by, still some people got no water. So many houses and the land, still some got nowhere to sleep. So much food, still some got no food to eat. So much joy to all, still some never want no joy. So much suffering in the street, yes. So much life forget to lead there. So much war, people searching for peace. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there.
Good morning and welcome to Sunday Review. Apologies for the late delay. It's called life. Life is what happens when you're busy making plans. So the important thing is that we're here this morning. Yaya Marin Coleman hosting for the next 2 weeks. William Bill Linda will not be in studio. So we have our sister Pambana Bassett co-hosting with us. Good morning, Pambana.
Good morning, Yaya. Good morning, Belize. Good morning, the diaspora.
Yes, and it's a big show, like world-class big, because we have a Belizean sister who has lived in Nigeria for 40 plus years. She writes extensively and in detail, well-researched, tapa Belizean, show off for the sister. We have her Skyping in from London. Her name is Therese Nweke. Welcome, Sister Therese.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe that everyone is seeing her on their screen. And so, sister, before I go any further, this is a news review show. We review news stories from the past week. We analyze, critique, debate, disagree, offer solutions. Sometimes when we have someone with expertise like yourself, we would focus on a particular topic. And so it'll be the Belize Guatemala conversation for the next hour and a half. This is where we make sense of the news. And because we're starting late, I won't go through the normal things I usually say. Sister Therese, you have written extensively on a variety of topics in the mandala. The West Indian Federation, Belize, Guatemala, oil, Belize's 7th Amendment. Pray do tell, where did you get all this experience and knowledge to write so prolifically and with such confidence?
Well, I was brought up in Belize. At the time I was in Belize, the educational system was fairly sound, and I believe that is a foundation that I was able to build on. And then I was educated at the University of the West Indies, UWI, Mona, Jamaica, and the Graduate Institute of International Relations, St. Augustine, Trinidad. And I have taught in Belizean schools, St. Michael's College, now defunct, SJC. In fact, our present foreign minister was one of my students. I taught him history at St. Michael's College. And then I joined my husband in Nigeria, and I've lived there for the past 42 years. I've worked in education, journalism, and I'm now a book editor. And I did a number of courses with Reuters, AP, the Thompson Foundation, and I was the first woman editor of the News Agency of Nigeria, which is Africa's largest news agency. I've also been a 1985 editorial fellow of the US State Department, and I've also been a weekly columnist of The Guardian, Nigeria's largest newspaper. And I suppose most importantly, I've been one of the founders and chief organizers of the largest nationwide program for Nigeria's rural women, which was a key hallmark of the President Ibrahim Babangida administration. And during those 8 years, I toured the length and breadth of Nigeria. Nigeria has a population of almost 200 million people, as you know. And I worked tirelessly with state commissions, not state commissions, local government areas, women's commissions, and various women's groups. And well, I'm more or less semi-retired, but all of these things, I believe, have given me a fairly good idea about what is and what is not. And I have always been interested in Belize. I've never owned any other passport besides that of Belize. And I'm not happy with what is happening in Belize now. And I keep a lid on what is happening in Belize because I keep on telling people, no matter what passports we might have from another country, nobody can take away that Belize passport, which is ours by right. And that is why I'm interested, and I will keep on being interested. And I feel that Belizeans who are younger than myself should be interested, because at the end of the day, we have no other country except Belize.
I'm very pleased and very proud of you, I'm sure, as our other Belizean brothers and sisters are. And for many of our readers who have read what you've written, that they're getting a chance to see you, like myself, for the first time. It is an honor to have you as our guest. Pambana was born on the continent of Africa, so you're definitely in good company with a sister from the continent. I had shared with you that I would like for us to divide the segments past, present, and future. And so, what are some historical knowledge or information that you feel is critical for Belizeans to understand that has not been a part of the current conversation and has not been taught in our education system? Points that you think are very key for Belizeans to understand historically in the Belize-Guatemala conversation.
I believe that the Amandala newspaper has adequately educated Belizeans who read and who want to be informed about the nitty-gritty of what really exists. But I would like to emphasize, as I did earlier with you, earlier in one of my emails to you, that if you look carefully at the whole history of the so-called dispute between Belize and Guatemala, most of our leaders, most of our negotiators, with the possible exception of Philip Golson, do not seem to really understand that Guatemala is a very, very serious enemy. We tend to underestimate that these people for almost 200 years have been insistent and have used every device and every wile possible. Even George Christ, in his finest moments, when he was determined that Belize would get its independence, and he pursued a very aggressive and positive foreign policy in moving, in getting various allies, both in the non-aligned movement, the Commonwealth of Nations, Latin American allies, because Cuba was the only one that really supported us, but later George Christ was able to get Colombia, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Argentina, Peru, about 16 of them or so, who had always supported Guatemala. He actually got them on our side. That was when our foreign policy went to the extent that trade unions, US senators, and congressmen, political parties, pressure groups. At that time, everything was taken to the International Forum of Public Opinion. That was, I think, that was our finest moment. But outside of that, I think our policymakers have underestimated and do not seem to fully understand exactly what Guatemala is about. If you look from the time of 1859 until the present day, through the heads of agreement, the Webster proposals, the two treaty proposals, it has always been dissimulation, lies, flip-flop of policies, and treachery, in which the Guatemalans talk from both sides of the mouth, and our policymakers do not seem to understand, do not seem to estimate the enemy that we are dealing with. There's another problem. Belizeans are not educated about this issue. The Belizeans that rose against their government in 1968 rose against their government in 1981 because they were ahead of the government. They understood more than the government what was really the issues. What were really the issues? Those Belizeans do not exist. Those Belizeans of 1968, of 1981, they are in declining numbers. What we have now in Belize is a population of foreigners. Most of them are ignorant of the Guatemalan issue. Most of them are not even interested. Most of them are economic migrants or Guatemalans, people whom we have an issue with. These people are not educated. These people cannot rise up and say we do not agree with this or we do not agree with that. I happen to know that about 8.5 million Belize dollars was allocated for an educational campaign. And this campaign was even supposed to include the diaspora. Some of this money was raised from Friends of Belize. Has this money been spent properly? Where is this money? The people who are involved, what have they done with this money? Education, education, education. Guatemalans have been educated for a long time that Belize is theirs. As I said, the generation of 1968, of 1981, they are not there. What is even amazing me is the nonchalance, almost a national indifference, almost a national amnesia about the issues. Then we have politicians speaking from both sides of the mouth, telling us that we don't have a problem, that Guatemala has always been an issue, and nothing is going to happen. That is living in a fool's paradise. I'm sitting here, looking from the outside, and I just cannot understand this lack of a moral compass in which people do not even seem to know the difference between right from wrong, the difference between patriotism and treachery. These are issues that bother me. I know these issues bother a number of well-meaning and knowledgeable Belizeans, not only in Belize, but in the diaspora. I believe I have answered your question.
Yes, you have, sister, thoroughly. Pambana, did you want to pose a question at this time?
Well, I would like to know a little bit about what you think currently are the root causes of the migrations from Guatemala, from Honduras, from El Salvador, And here in Belize, we have a government administration that is kind of hands-off when it comes to investigating what is happening within the territory of Guatemala. So our foreign minister, Wilfred Saudi Elrington, was asked about the violent expulsions of Guatemalan indigenous poor people from their lands, and refuses to comment or says that he doesn't have enough information on that. I wonder if you think that it's a role of Belizeans in uncovering the truth to look at the root causes of why it is that so many people are leaving their homes, and as you point out, are coming to Belize in large numbers and from many different countries.
Well, there has been this belief for a very long time that Belize is easy. We have 8,867 square miles, a very scant population. We are not up to 500,000. And people think that, well, let's go and live there. In 1975, when Guatemala decided to invade Belize, it actually obtained the support of El Salvador with the promise that it would assist El Salvador to settle 500,000 Salvadorian peasants in Belize over a 10-year period. That was the promise that Guatemala gave El Salvador. Well, at that time, Belize was still a colony of Britain, and Britain then sent in its military, and Guatemala had to stop its plans of invasion. Now, during the Central American Civil Wars, the Americans, Ronald Reagan, did not want Latinos to flood America. Belize was a soft target, as it has always been. In fact, I think we are cursed. Belize is actually cursed to have the sort of politicians it has had, with very few exceptions. We are a rich country, beautiful, with fantastic natural resources, but this is one of our curses. So, we being soft targets, thousands of Latin American immigrants who were fleeing from the civil wars of Central America were allowed into Belize. And we got a stipend for allowing these people in. That was when the ethnic balance of Belize changed. My people, the Creoles, were the majority, and now we are just 21% of the population. Now, I have traveled all over Central America, particularly in the 70s and the 80s. And Belize is actually quite different, very, very different from our neighbors. Another thing that perplexes me is when I go through all the papers, I go through the history, I go through the politics of this so-called unfounded Guatemalan claim, there's always this belief that Belize can only have economic prosperity if it is centered within a Central American trade nexus. Even the Belize Chamber of Commerce refuses to cut trade ties with Guatemala because it thinks that this is the way to go. Little does the Belize Chamber of Commerce realize that trade is one of the most powerful weapons to deal with an enemy. The Iranians can tell you some more about this, as well as the Russians. Trade is one of the most powerful weapons in which to fight an enemy, in which to deal with an enemy. So, as I said, we have always been considered a very soft target, and there's this belief that we need the Central American common market even more than CARICOM. Now, I don't agree with this. If you look at a country like Singapore, a country with no natural resources, a nexus of small islands, at the time of its independence in 1964, its population were semi-illiterate laborers from Malaysia, China, and India. But because it had a visionary leader who felt that education was the most important weapon he could have to move his country from a third world country to a first world country. Singapore has no resources, but it has a system, it has a per capita income that equals Western European countries. It has the 14th largest reserves in the world. It is a country of fiscal discipline. It is a country of exports. It is surrounded by large neighbors like Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. And it's richer than those countries. I don't think our leaders read. If they look at the story of Singapore, from third world to first world, some lessons can be gained from the Singapore experience. I'm not saying that we don't need immigration, but we should look for quality immigration, not any kind of immigrant. I was in Belize a couple months ago, and at every government office I went, I met hordes and hordes of people from neighboring republics. I'm not being prejudiced, I'm not being racist, but as I looked at these people, I was a minority there. I said, what do these people have to offer the polity of Belize? When Belizeans immigrated to Canada and to the US, I think we had something to offer. When West Indians immigrated to Britain and America and Canada, I think they had something to offer. So, as I said, we are a soft touch, and that is why we continue to be exploited and sold down the river.
Before we go to break, following up on Pambana's question, do you feel that it has been strategic for Guatemalans in particular to keep coming into this country, sometimes with the assistance of our elected leaders, that is another way for Guatemala to claim our country by having their citizens slowly but surely increase by numbers and live in Belize? Is it another type of invasion?
Yes, yes. You are 100% correct. Invasion by infiltration. Invasion by settlement. You are correct.
And
another
yes.
thing is that this question of giving away our citizenship in the most cavalier possible manner. As I said, sometimes people do not know the difference between patriotism and treachery. People do not know the difference between right and wrong. If you look at the Arab states, if you look at the Gulf states, if you look at Saudi Arabia, Even the Palestinians, Arabs like themselves, people who share the same religion, they are not given citizenship. Even in a country like Jordan, as open and as generous as it has been to Palestinian refugees, Syrian refugees, they do not give out their citizenship. Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, rely solely on foreign labor. 3/4 of their population consists of foreign laborers, people from Pakistan, people from India, people from the Philippines, and even from one or two developed countries, even people from Nigeria. Nigerian doctors are there. You are never given even resident status. Belize has not understood this. Belize thinks that it is America, where once you are born there, you are automatically a citizen. Once you reside there for a number of years, you can become a citizen. I'm talking residing there legally, you can become a citizen. We cannot afford that luxury. We cannot afford that luxury. You see, one of the things which I find very difficult to understand, we don't understand history, we don't know history, we don't look at international politics, we don't look at what other nations do, we just sit in a little cocoon and think that that is our world. We are so narrow and so visionless. These are the things that disturb me. And then you have people in Belize who open the eyes of other Belizeans to those things, and they think that they are mad, or they think that there's something the matter with them. In some ways, we don't seem to learn. As I said, I was back home for a couple of months ago, and I was very disappointed at what I saw. And as I said, there's this general indifference and this general lackadaisical attitude towards things. And I said, this country has deteriorated. 1 step forward and 5 steps backwards. You are right about this infiltration, and it is officially sanctioned. So what do we do about it? Unfortunately, both the government and the opposition are happily singing from the same hymn sheet. There's no difference between any of them. No difference.
We'll need to take a break, Sister Therese. And when we come back, we definitely have to talk about that hymn sheet that they're singing from, and who created that hymn sheet, and why are we, the Belizean people, listening to the song. And it seems that many of us are willing to go right along with what they're singing. So, listeners and viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Meet Juan. He lives in Sartaneja. It's Sunday evening, and Juan is about to travel back to the city for work. His wife reminds him that she needs phone credit and money for the week's expenses. He has no cash, but he does have his debit card. He walks to his neighborhood merchant knowing that with Atla Express from Atlantic Bank, he can make cash withdrawals and purchase phone credit, all in one place and even on weekends. Juan leaves home with peace of mind that his family is taken care of. You too can enjoy the service. All you need is your debit card and a valid ID. Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Don't be fooled by the fake, barely there 4G. Experience the power of Smart's 4G LTE, the real 4G.
When life puts it down, I promise I'll always be around.
Hello, officer. Yes, officer, I got a serious complaint for you. Yes, I need her for confident the one the next door. Look here, all kind of nice, officer, all kind of nice. Look here, and they do so illegal activities, you know. You should have seen the heavy and strange machine they got over there. And all kind of people, all time of the night. Oh, nice. Officer, me young baby can't even sleep. Yes, man. Please, go deal it there for me. No, I know you could do it. You. Yes, yes. All right, officer. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Deal it there one day.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. That's the sound of the police.
Where you going in now? Get up, son. Get up, get up. You do not hear the new rule about noise pollution? That we all have fancy equipment, sir, brother. Sister? That what is what happening now?
He not supposed to have entertainment or something?
Boss, listen to me. We know they broke no law. We rehearse for the biggest and the baddest thing ever for come. At the top of the Krem 4th Annual Awards, red carpet style, stars among stars, stars for Caribbean, stars for the international, stars for a writer for we star boy and star gal, ready for get their thing when they deserve. Hard work for 2015, you understand? In the year, April the 9th, the place done a bliss.
Yes, 6 o'clock, the thing was set up. Now I got all kind of awards like Best Video, Best Producer, Best Male and Female Superstar. It was lock off, you don't know.
And the hottest thing by Belize and all legitimate artists want mash up the stage with Lord firing flame performance.
Killer Arnold, Moore's head.
You mean to tell me Moore's double used to be high one day?
They are the big people.
Yes, and then when they hype up the thing, Killer Moore's the host this thing, it was set
Hold on, shut up, on the freeze. Make a call Moore's double used to be hide right now. Yes, Mr. W used to be hide. What happened? I can't go intervene for one little thing when it happened here with some high-tech equipment. Then it talk about Krem Award show. Yeah. April 9th, 6 o'clock they say. And I know that part of that. Wait, tell me that? Makute? Sure. Special guest. I will give a what? I will call in my uniform. I will haul my best uniform, Mr. used to be. I will haul my best uniform, Mr. used to be here. I will pull up on duty. I will pull up on duty. What time you say? 6 o'clock. That way? Bliss? I come. No say no more, Mr. used to be our lawyer. Our lawyer, people let our lawyer. Alright? Get up.
Krem Awards 2016, Saturday, April 9th at the Bliss Center for the Performing Arts, starting at 6 p.m. Tickets are available at the Bliss and Krem Radio for $10.
Meet Juan. He lives.
Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there. The people of society out there. I see you out and you're jolly doing everything you want. Scoop a dive and you ski every day you can want. Find the masses of the people out there that you feel and wants out there. You say that you care, yet you have a living fear. While the seed that you sow is the fruit it's gonna bear. Can't wear the shoe your foot is bigger than the pear out there. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people.
Welcome back to the second segment of Sunday Review. I am Marin Coleman, Pambana Bassett, and via Skype from London, our Belizean sister who has lived in Nigeria for 40 plus years, Therese Nweke. Am I pronouncing it right?
Nweke.
Nweke. And you let it be known she's a Southside sister. Awesome things come out of Southside. Sister Therese, someone called and wanted to ask, we said we would pick up from what I am calling the ICJ hymn sheet. How can our leaders, we the Belizean people elected them, how can they be singing from this hymn sheet? How can they, especially when they're the generation that you talked about who resisted? How could they be singing from that hymn sheet consistently, loudly, adamantly? How could they? What are your thoughts on that? Why would they be singing from that hymn sheet?
It's possible that they could answer that question better than myself.
Yes.
Because they're the ones singing, I'm not. It's possible that they don't really understand the full ramifications about going to the ICJ. I don't think that Guatemala has any intention of going to the ICJ. In the same way that Venezuela does not have any intention of going to the ICJ with its so-called dispute in which it is claiming 2/3 of Guyana. It has no intention of going to the ICJ. It says it's not even going to the ICJ. And as I said, I don't think Guatemala is going anywhere. Why I say this is that historically, Guatemala has always resisted going to the ICJ. Even when Britain had suggested a tribunal of 3 people, one chosen by Guatemala, one chosen by Britain, and one chosen by the US. This was some many, many years ago, before Belize attained independence. Guatemala refused. So this bogey of going to the ICJ, Guatemala holding a referendum. Remember, it was supposed to hold a referendum during its last presidential elections. It did not. It's not going to any ICJ. So for anyone from the Belizean side to say that we should go to the ICJ, I believe they do not understand. Or let me be generous, I don't think they understand. Now, I have noted that the ICJ, its decisions are not binding. If you look in one of my write-ups, I gave the example of Nicaragua taking the US to the ICJ. The ICJ ruled in Nicaragua's favor, and the US totally ignored the ICJ ruling, never paid any compensation, and that was where the matter ended. Guatemala has proved beyond any shadow of doubt that it is a country that does not respect the rule of law. Even within its own boundaries, it doesn't respect the rule of law. As I have pointed out, for 36 years, it was a country at war with itself. If it could not respect the rule of law within its own borders, in which it actually practiced genocide against thousands and thousands of its Maya indigenous citizens, took their land. Again, if you look at the various agreements Belize has made with Guatemala, particularly these confidence-building measures, it has not really stuck to its side of the bargain. It has even abrogated that one of 2005, in which the borders of our country, land, river, sea, were to remain as they were since 1859. Now, the second part of the question as to why Guatemala and not in Guatemala, I think it was why Guatemala doesn't deal with Britain instead of Belize. Again, this shows that there is a great misunderstanding. Belize has been independent since 1981. So it is a matter of Belize and Guatemala. So Belize has been a sovereign state since 1981. Guatemala is a sovereign state, and the dispute is now between Belize and Guatemala, not Belize and Britain. I believe I have answered that question.
Right. Even though Belize is a sovereign state, because the initial agreement was between the country of Britain and the country of Guatemala, some people take the position that not because Belize is now independent, that Britain no longer has that responsibility. It's Britain that made that agreement with Guatemala.
Yes, but if you look carefully in the field of international relations, if you look at the dispute between Venezuela and Guyana, you would find that the boundaries of Guyana were settled in the year 1899 when Guyana was still a colony of Britain. Now, in 1966, the Venezuelans decided to abrogate that 1899 agreement. And the issue is between Venezuela and Guyana, not Venezuela and Britain. So even if a treaty has been signed between two parties, Guyana is an inheritor, Belize is an inheritor. So the conflict is between Belize and Guatemala, not between Belize and Britain. I remembered that George Price tried to get a defense guarantee around the 1970s when he was hustling for Belize's independence. He did not really succeed. The canny British, to quote Evan X, just said, okay, they would be there they would be in Belize for a short period. They are not really there now. So it must be understood that in international law, the dispute has to be now between Belize, which is a sovereign nation, and Guatemala. So even though this treaty was signed by Britain, Britain was the colonial master then, Britain cannot be responsible ad infinitum. I hope I've made myself clear.
You have. Pambana, what are your thoughts on the Guyana-Venezuela dispute?
Well, I think that it's really important for us to investigate the powers that are behind these disputes. So, for example, when we look at Guatemala and we examine the history of genocide, which was backed by and funded in large part by the United States. There was also Israeli counterintelligence during the 80s in Guatemala. It's also important that we look at the businesses that are behind these conflicts. So recently, I'm sure the news arrived even to Nigeria that Berta Cáceres, who is an organizer in Honduras, a Lenca indigenous organizer from Copin, was murdered. She was shot in her home. She had been defending her territory and working in collaboration and cooperation with other indigenous and African peoples in Honduras. Many people say, well, of course, it's possible that some hitmen were hired and that she was murdered in that way. But that it's very important to understand what is the history behind this violence that allowed for this organizer who had the most incredible protections. She was mandated by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights to receive protection from the state. She had incredible international solidarity. She was famous as an organizer. She had won awards. But she was murdered because the conditions existed in which she could be murdered. So those conditions were created by a 2009 coup that was supported by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton by the US. And she was also killed because of interests, international business interests. So in Honduras, mining concessions, for example, Canadian mining is large in Central America. So many people are saying, well, of course, we could look to just the people who fired the gun, but we should look at what businesses are behind that. So I say all of this to say that even in the issue, excuse me, of Venezuela and Guyana, it is important that we look to the history of colonialism, of British colonialism, of the usurpation of lands from indigenous and African people, and very specifically something that hasn't been discussed very much, because as Belizeans we are Caribbean and we have pride in being, even though we're no longer a majority black nation, we identify with an African heritage, so we identify with Guyana. But a lot of the recent energies around that so-called territorial dispute has been caused because a large oil company, ExxonMobil, has sought to explore that undisputed territory. And with the permission to do so by the Guyanese president, I'm not sure, he might be a Prime Minister Granger, I believe is his name, who actually has training from the US military. So there are a lot of things behind that territorial dispute that make it a lot more complicated than just one nation trying to claim another. There are businesses behind the current dispute that we are facing, the unfounded territorial claim of Guatemala. So Belize is incredibly rich in natural resources, and the Guatemalan state is looking to steal those. They do it to their own indigenous peoples, and they plan to do it to our people here in Belize. And many people could say that the Belizean state is also guilty of stealing land and resources from the people of Belize. And so when we talk about these disputes, that's why it's so important that we look to the grassroots as the people who are most impacted by the failures of our government to protect us, and also those people who are natural stewards of the resources. So I cannot comment in such historical depth as you do, particularly when it comes to Venezuela and Guyana. But I do believe that that issue is dissimilar from Belize and Guatemala in a number of ways. And I think one of the major ones is that oil exploration has played a large part in recent years.
You have made a very, very significant point, and I cannot agree with you more. You are spot on. In fact, I don't know whether most Belizeans know this, but Guatemala's agricultural minister, Mario Mendez, owns a Zata business in Belize.
Say that again?
Guatemala's agriculture minister, Mario Mendez, he owns a Zata business in Belize.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Check it and you'll find that I'm right. Now, there's a theory that this 1859 treaty, which Guatemala now repudiates, and it repudiates it around the central issue of that cart road not being built by Britain, even though on subsequent occasions Britain actually offered Guatemala £50,000. Later Guatemala upped the ante and said, no, give me £400,000 and all of Belize. Later it changed and said, okay, give me £400,000 and half of Belize. There is a theory that this issue about Cart Road is merely a red herring. The issue is about oil. In the 1930s, there was a rumor that petroleum was to be found in Central America. Since petroleum was found in Mexico and petroleum was found in Venezuela, it was assumed that petroleum would be found in the middle, just where the Petén and Belize is. And that is the main reason why Guatemala decided in the 1930s to renew its claim on Belize. That cart road, in which Article 6 of the treaty was said to be broken, was just a red herring. The issue was oil. Think about it.
Excellent exchange. When we're talking about oil, it makes me think of the water. You sent me an email earlier this morning, and when we're talking about who has control of the water, and really this conversation has really been intensified because of Belize territorial consistent activism in the Sarstoon River area. And one of the points that you had made, sister, was that and I posted it on the Sunday Review Facebook page. It's the UNCLOS Convention on the Law of the Sea. Mm-hmm. Can you, there's a lot that I don't know, and I'm sure many Belizeans don't either. But tying that into the oil situation, can you tell us some more about the Convention on the Law of the Sea and what our leaders have said or not said when it relates to our responsibility as a territory?
If I were to go into that, it would take up a lot of time.
Okay, so just give us some snapshots, because that's not a part of the conversation that we've heard, and it's very relevant.
Actually, my concern now is that the Sarstoon has been taken over.
That's how you interpret it, that it has been taken over by Guatemala?
No, definitely. And anybody who says anything to the contrary is either a knave or a fool or both. The Sarstoon has been taken over by Guatemala. A part of our territory has already been lost. And this has to do with Guatemala's so-called reading of the 1859 treaty. You see, what is most worrisome is the flip-flops in Guatemala's arguments and policies. The Sarstoon has been taken over, and we are not doing the needful. And with the Sarstoon being taken over, more and more of our land, our rivers, and our air, everything will be taken over. Guatemala has been determined for over a century that it will have Belize. And as your co-host said, there is this question of natural resources. It's a simple question of, I want what you have. And even though it is yours, I will say it is mine so that I can have it. It's as simple as that. As I said, I will not go into the law of the sea,
right,
because it is a very, very full subject. Okay. I'm not an international lawyer,
right,
but I have my own ideas on the subject.
It's also, I think, very relevant that we understand what the possible options could be. I don't know what would inspire Belizeans to, I don't know, and many of us don't know, like, why are we sitting down? We see it, we hear it, and we, for the most part, do nothing. Do you know of any other country that this has happened to and the people have responded like this, that they do nothing for the most part?
When heads of agreement package was announced, the Civil Service Union of Belize was one of the bodies that said no. The then opposition, which is now the government, the UDP, said no. Then you had people like Mireleng authors, who was in the diaspora at the time, organizing people to go on the streets of Belize and demonstrate. And if you look carefully at what happened in 1981, Belizeans were demonstrating against their government, they were demonstrating against the negotiators, and they were demonstrating against the British. And that was the end of the heads-off agreement package. The same thing happened in 1968. We don't have to wait on any government. But as I said, the population of Belize has radically changed. Is it the aliens that will be going on the street to demonstrate? They don't even know. Some of them have divided loyalties. Is it the Creoles who are in a state of civil war on the south side of Belize that will be going on the streets to demonstrate? Is it the unemployed and homeless Belizeans? For the first time in my life, I saw Belizeans, Creoles like myself, sleeping on the streets of Belize, begging, looking very wretched. Are those Belizeans, unemployed and underemployed, who are hungry, who can be bought for $50? Their vote can be bought for $50, just $50 Belizean. Are those people going on the streets to demonstrate? Do you feel like yourself and myself? How many of us are there to go on the streets to demonstrate? And the government knows this. The opposition knows this. And for the UDP and the PUP to be singing from the same hymn sheet, Belizeans should wake up and smell the coffee. Wake up and smell the coffee.
Well, I think that there's a lot of reasons why people would want to demonstrate. So here in Belize, in one of the articles that you've posted online, and I apologize, I can't quote exactly which, you spoke to the fact that Belize has an incredible amount of land and a pretty small population in comparison. I believe that the statistics you used, and this may have been a few years ago, was that for every square kilometer, 17 Belizeans could live comfortably and share that square kilometer of land. And it's apparent that that is not the case. We have populations of people who are living in less than 20 meters square. Belize is in great need of a land reform. Belize is in great need of an educational reform. Belize has a number of causes for which people need to organize, don't have a choice but to organize, to take to the streets, to do petitions, to boycott. And we have a number of populations who have reason to do that. The East Indian population here in Belize was brought enslaved. They were brought through an indentured servitude practice that was tantamount to slavery. They were forced to work in the cane fields. Many of them died in the crossing from Southeast Asia. They are descendants today who continue to live in poverty and continue to see hardly any of those resources that their ancestors fought for and built this country on. The same is true for the Mayan population. These were their ancestral lands. Many of them were forced into slavery, were forced into inhumane conditions so that the powerful and the colonial elite and the administrators, who often look like you and me, and very particularly like me, were becoming rich off of stealing from East Indians, from Mayans, from African Creole people. There are monuments and vestiges of slavery in this city. There's a place called Igbo Town, and it's beautiful. It shows the resilience of our people, the resistance of our people, the fact that we are still alive despite centuries of colonialism and slavery. But it also shows that there's a population who built this country who is being utterly exploited. The same is true for the Garifuna population, African indigenous people who suffered a genocide on St. Vincent in 1795, I believe, or 1797. Who were forced out of Honduras for various reasons, who have continued to face discrimination in this country of Belize. You know, this is a beautiful nation, but it's also a nation of people who have suffered colonialism and brutality, and for that reason need to fight for land and for justice. And when we look at the territorial claim of Guatemala against Belize, it's very clear that the people who are getting the shorter end of the stick, the people who are getting the least out of all of these negotiations and out of the current status quo, are those impoverished people and those descendants. Even those who have come from El Salvador, they were fleeing, you know, big businesses committing genocide against their people in El Salvador. The same is true in Honduras. They had a coup. Their democratically elected president was kicked out of it. He was in his pajamas and forced to leave his country because he raised the minimum wage and began land reform and called for a constitutional amendment that the Supreme Court deemed illegal. So we are facing in Belize states that are not protecting their people. And so you're right to say that we're in a wretched place, but there is so much history upon which we can draw so that our people can begin to organize and fight for our rights. It may be that people don't understand a claim of Guatemala as being the most threatening claim to them. But what people do understand is that Belize does not belong to Belizeans, because Belizeans are not getting land, because Belizeans are not getting their due, because they're being forced to vote for $50. So in Belize, I believe there is reason for people to organize, and that it can be under the banner of really fighting for independence, true independence and true autonomy. And I believe that even the mestizo population and the recently immigrant population can understand that cause. They're coming from countries where they've had to flee because they've been denied the same rights that Belizeans are denied. Maybe not to the same extent, but there exists the opportunity for us to collaborate and to work together and to fight for our rights.
Your thoughts on what Pambana shared, sister?
Actually, I agree that the vestiges of slavery, colonialism, and imperialism are still very much around. But I happen to take the view that we should not beat that dead horse. The fault there, Brutus, lies in ourselves and not in our stars, that we are underlings. The problem of Belize has to do with the lack of visionary leadership. The people who replaced the British are just like the British.
Colonial servants.
Well, you write
Worse
about
than
the West Indian Federation and the failure of the rejection of Belize to join that federation. It's hard for me in 2016 to not see that as an anti-Black decision.
Yes, but I'm saying that the problem of Belize, put aside slavery, put aside colonialism, put aside imperialism. The problem with Belize has to do with Belizean politicians who have simply taken over the reins of power from the so-called colonialists, and they are now the colonialists. The same way the British exploited the logwood and the mahogany and had no economic plan for Belize, the same way the current politicians are exploiting our land, our natural resources, every single thing. And in the case of the British, they took it back to Britain. In the case of the politicians, they are putting it in their pockets.
They go to Miami for vacation. If they need to go to a doctor, they go to Merida. They don't invest in any of the resources that are here in this country. They send their children to study in London. It's true.
Yes. The fault is with the politicians. The fault is with Belizeans. And in a way, you'd say Belizeans have no choice. It's like a choice between black dog and monkey. If you vote for the UDP, you get the same thing like when you vote for the PUP. So what do? The system has to change. The system changed.
We need to take a break at this point, and when we come back, we'll discuss the ways that the system could possibly change, hopefully from the bottom up, people-led. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Belizeans love chicken. There's the national flower, the national flag, and then there's the national meat, chicken. At Caribbean Chicken, we do chicken right. From our farms to your table. Excellent, exceptional, amazing chicken. Our chicken is the best you'll find in Belize. Choice cuts of premium meat, cut and sorted to your specifications. Even pre-seasoned if you like. Always fresh, always right. Our chicken even looks better because we want our packaging to be as fresh as our product. When you want the best, there's only one. Caribbean Chicken. The secret is out.
When life puts it down, I promise I'll always be around.
Hello, officer? Yes, officer, I got a serious complaint for you. Yes, I need to call for the one the next door. Look here, all kind of nice officer, all kind of nice. Look here, and they do so illegal activities, you know. You should have seen the heavy and strange machine they got over there. And all kind of people, all time of the night. Oh, nice. Officer, me young baby can't even sleep. Yes, man. Please, go deal it there for me. No, I know you could do it. You. Yes, yes. All right, officer. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Deal it there one day.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast. That's the sound of the police.
Where you going in now? Get up, sir. Get up, get up. You don't hear the new rule about noise pollution? That we all have fancy equipment, sir, brother. Sister? Now what is happening now?
He not supposed to do entertainment or something?
Boss, listen to me. We know they broke no law. We rehearse for the biggest and the baddest thing ever for come. At the top about the Krem 4th Annual Awards, red carpet style, stars among stars, stars for Caribbean, stars for the international, stars for writer for we star boy, star gal, ready for get their thing when they deserve. Hard work for 2015, you understand? In the year, April the 9th, the place done a bliss.
Yes, 6 o'clock, the thing was set up. Now I got all kind of awards like best video, best producer, best male and female superstar. It was lock off, you don't know.
And the hottest thing by Belizean own legitimate artists want mash up the stage with load firing flame performance.
Killer Arnold, Moore's head.
You don't mean to tell me Moore's double used to be high one day?
They're the big people.
Yes, and then when they hype up the thing, Killer Moore's the host this thing, it was set
Hold
up.
on, shut up, on the freeze. Make a call Moore's double used to be hide right now. Yes, Mr. W used to be hide. What happened? I can't go intervene for one little thing when it happened here with some high-tech equipment. Then it talk about Krem Award show. Yeah. April 9th, 6 o'clock they say. And I know that part of that. Wait, tell me that? Makute? Sure. Special guest. I will give a what? I will call in my uniform. I will haul my best uniform, Mr. used to be. I will haul my best uniform, Mr. used to be here. I will pull up per duty. I will pull up per duty. What time you say? 6 o'clock. That way? Bliss? I come. No say no more, Mr. used to be. I will allow you. I will allow you people let. I will allow you. Alright? Get up.
Krem Awards 2016, Saturday, April 9th at the Bliss Center for the Performing Arts, starting at 6 p.m. Tickets are available at the Bliss and Krem Radio for $10.
Belize.
So much food, still some got no food to eat. So much time to work, still some never want no time. So much suffering in the street, yes. So much life forget to lead there. So much war, people searching for peace. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there.
Welcome back to the final segment of our conversation this morning. I am having a blast. I'm loving it. Yaya Pambana, Sister Therese Nweke. I'll get it. I'll learn it. So welcome back, sis. In this final segment, we'll take, I forgot what it is that I said we were going to talk about. I don't know if it was solutions or how do we move forward when we have historically visionless people. I've learned from Pambana, really colonial servants. I mean, they've been good students of the colonizers. And so there's a level of mental enslavement that still influences the choices they make. And then because we have a large population of our people who are not informed, who are just trying to survive day to day, it's like we're in a rock and a hard place. How do we move forward? Pambana's shared the possibility to organize and mobilize from a grassroots perspective, looking at other people's history, for example, the Zapatista people in Chiapas, that there are examples within our region and globally that we can learn life lessons from. But then the question is still, who will take on the responsibility to lead the organizing and mobilizing of our people? Sister Therese, what are your thoughts?
If you look at the Cuban Revolution, it was a group of middle-class intellectuals. Because Castro was middle-class, a lawyer, it's always the middle class, if you look carefully, that can be a mobilizing factor in getting people to move. If you look again at the Castro Revolution, it was the middle class, a tiny cadre of middle class revolutionaries who decided to overthrow the Batista government. If you look at most revolutions, it is the thinkers who end up being the catalyst for the revolution. I don't think that the people who are messing up Belize are really colonial servants. They are servants of their own pockets. As I said, the colonial people took Belize's natural resources back to Britain. These ones are taking Belize's natural, they are using Belize as a collateral and putting the money in their pockets. And they are very shameless about it. They don't care. They do not care. As I said, when you lose your moral compass, you don't know the difference between right from wrong, or the difference between patriotism and treachery. I will not go so far as to say that people have been bought or sold, but it's very close to that. We will have to, I think the Belizean people, those who are really, really interested, will have to form pressure groups. And it starts very small. Women's groups, youth groups, wherever they exist. That reminds, another bad thing that is happening in Belize is the use of juveniles. Gang leaders are using juveniles to settle scores, to murder their victims. That is very bad. But youth groups, wherever they exist, will just have to be part of a mobilizing force. And in the case of this Guatemalan problem, Belize has to gain global support to influence the course of this territorial millstone in its favor and shut up Guatemala forever. So two things are here. One, pressure groups will have to be the mobilizers for change. And they can start anywhere. Trade unions, as I said, pressure women's groups, youth groups, all sorts of groups, and strong individuals. But as I said, most people in Belize are actually involved in the issue of how do I eat, daily survival. And where you have that kind of thing, people are not easy to mobilize. So I said it is now the middle classes, the conscious middle classes that will have to be the movers and shakers. The Wilmahers, those are the people that have to take charge. Look at the Maya in the Toledo. You see how they have mobilized themselves. And they are forced to be reckoned with. Why can't the Garifuna and the Creole take a chapter from the Maya book and do the same for themselves? And all these groups coming together can form a common front and deal with the common enemy within and the common enemy without. Because Belizeans must realize that we have a common enemy within and a common enemy without. We have to fight on two fronts, within and without. It's sad, but this is true.
I have to ask you this question. I just have to ask you this question. What are your thoughts about your former history student when you hear him speak as the foreign minister?
No comment.
You're really a diplomat? Pambana, any other question you'd like to ask your sister?
Well, we were talking a little bit in the break about the fact that Nigeria has actually been involved in a case in front of the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. Would you be able to share a little bit more about that?
Yes, Nigeria had a case concerning the rich Bakassi Peninsula. Bakassi Peninsula is rich in oil and marine resources. In fact, its marine resources are almost second to none in the world. And Cameroon, a small, relatively weak country as compared to Nigeria, decided that the Bakassi Peninsula was to be its own. So the matter went to the ICJ, and the Nigerians, for all their gra money and big talk, I don't think the Nigerians were prepared. But the cunning Cameroonians were. And they went to the ICJ and they got exactly what they wanted. And Nigeria could not believe what caught it. And there was nothing it could do. Because Nigeria, well, as the so-called giant of Africa, though I call it a giant with clay feet, felt, well, we have to obey the rulings of the ICJ, but the loss of the Bakassi Peninsula is still running short among Nigerians. And that is what happens when you go to the ICJ and you are not prepared and you are dealing with an opponent which is smarter than yourself. And disengaging from the Bakassi Peninsula was a very untidy business. In fact, the repercussions are still existing in the year 2016. I think I've answered your question.
Yes, oftentimes that case will be referred to when we're having this conversation to just share a real life example of what happened to two countries who went before the ICJ. Because it's again singing from the same hymn sheet. We cannot lose, and I don't know since when anyone can guarantee to someone what can happen in a court before you even go, that it's a guarantee that it's going to go either way. So background stories like that is very important to the conversation as an alternative to what we keep hearing. It's interesting as well, as much as has been happening in the Sarstoon River with the Belize Territorial Volunteer, that really this has not been picked up by any international news media. What are your thoughts on that? That just from a media perspective, that no one else seems to be carrying the story.
You see, Belize is a small, vulnerable nation. It's so small. And we don't really have a good public relations outfit. Because you can be small, but you can have a lot of voice by making a lot of noise. As I said in one of my write-ups, when Guatemala took over the Sarstoon, I would have thought that Belizeans living in New York would have picketed the Guatemalan UN foreign minister, the Guatemalan UN permanent mission. They would have decided to contact AP, BBC, Reuters, Al Jazeera, and so on, and make a lot of noise about it. I would have thought that the UN and Belize's permanent mission to the UN would have used its good offices to agitate among people there. This is what is happening. But it was all silence. Even Belizeans living in Britain, nobody went to the Guatemalan embassy. The Guatemalan embassy is in London. Nobody went to any of these Guatemalan embassies, even with placards and pickets, and say, "You have taken our land." And as a journalist, journalists like news. They like sensational news lines. Headlines, sorry. So if you don't make yourself known, if you don't open your mouth, if you don't scream and shout, nobody will know that you are suffering or something bad has happened to you. We don't have a good public relations outfit. We don't have sufficient media courage. Media coverage.
You might have said the right word, media courage.
Yes. I'm sorry, but I meant media
coverage.
And we are still, what is the word we used to say when I was growing up? Freda.
Yes.
Freda. We are so cautious. We don't want to give offense. We don't want to seem as if we are bothering people. So we hold back and suffer in silence. That is nonsense. So Belizeans, wherever they are. For example, I'm the only Belizean, as far as I know, living in Lagos, a city of over 20 million people. But everywhere I go, they say, "Where are you from? Are you West Indian?" I say, if I tell you where I'm from, it is going to be it's going to be a lesson in geography. I'm from Belize. And I go and I say, Belize is just south of Mexico. It is in Central America. And I tell them about Belize. So lots of people, when they see me, Miss Belize is here. So what I'm saying is that even though I'm the only Belizean, as far as I know, in a city of 20 million people, in a country of almost 200 million people, in my own small way, I make my presence felt. I've given so many lectures about Belize. And even though I'm living in Africa, I'm a black person living on a continent of essentially black people. Foreign blacks encounter discrimination as they would even in white countries. Maybe less so, but still discrimination. And I refuse to be discriminated against. I remember when I was leading a Nigerian delegation. I was appointed by the president to lead this Nigerian delegation to Germany shortly after the Berlin Wall had fallen. And there were a number of Nigerians who resented the fact that I was appointed by the presidency to lead this delegation. And it was a trade delegation. And I overheard a number of them saying, look at that one. People who don't even know their names, who don't even know their ancestry, descendants of slaves. They did not know that I overheard what they were saying. Because slavery is a badge of shame in Africa. To be a descendant of a slave is not something that is enviable. Well, I heard what they said. I pretend as if I didn't hear. But 2 days later, while we had dinner, we were talking about ancestry, and I was able to say, well, I don't know anybody here at this table who can trace their ancestry back to 1800 as I can on one side and 1812 to the other. Even in my husband's family, he goes as far as his grandfather and not further. And there was dead silence. I, a descendant of slaves, was able to say that I could trace my ancestry back to 1800 on one side and 1812. And I added, and we have birth certificates where I come from, in Little Belize. We don't have affidavits of births, as some people, or most people, in Nigeria have. You swear a declaration of birth, no birth certificate. I said my grandmother, who was born in 1865, had a birth certificate. And there was silence. So, Belizeans, no matter how we might be in a minority, we should learn to be assertive. We should make our voices heard. Don't be a shrinking violet. I'm not saying that we should be pushy or overly aggressive. But when we are right, when we know we have a cause, we should stand up and fight our cause. If we do not fight our cause, nobody is going to fight for us. Those people who have made money, who have sold our land, sold our keys, sold our patrimony, they will not be there when the roll is called. They will run off on their jets. They will run to their second and third homes in Miami, in New York, or wherever. They will not be there. So, all of us, we should stand up and be counted.
Thank you so much, sister. We'll need to close out the show, but we definitely intend to Skype with you more often and to use you as one of our guides with the knowledge and the information to assist with organizing and mobilizing, and even as a journalist, hopefully that we can take the lead in internationalizing this particular issue that is a threat to our people and our sovereignty. So I want to say thanks on behalf of all Belizeans. We thank you for, in your way, forever being a Belizean ambassador and making your voice heard. I'm just so proud of you. 42 years living on the continent of Africa. That was a bold choice you made 42 years ago. And I'm sure your husband is thankful for it. So any final thoughts you want to share with us before we leave?
Well, what do I say? I'm a Belizean. I must say that I don't wish to be anything other than I am. I have always been comfortable in my own skin, and I will continue to be comfortable in my own skin. I'm proud to be a Belizean, and I will never give up on Belize, no matter what. I will continue praying that we will end up having the true leaders that we ought to have. They say the people deserve the leaders that they get. I don't agree. We don't deserve what we have. We do not.
Thank you so much. Final thoughts, Pambana?
It's hard to follow up on that one. It's just such a pleasure always to have these conversations. I think that one of the really important parts that I would seek to push is that even if we are fighting for our territory, we need to fight for our territory, for our boundaries, and we also need to fight for the society that we want to live in. So even if we have the Sarstoon River, how can we ensure that our people have the rights to use the resources, ensure that our people are being educated in culturally relevant ways, meaningful education, learning appropriate technologies. It's not enough to just fight for the border. We also have to fight for what's within the border, and we have to fight for our autonomy and for our rights as a people. You know, recently a lot of conversation has been held about the right of Garinagu to practice Garifuna spirituality. We shouldn't just fight for words and more pretty words. We should fight for things like Convention 169 of the International Labor Organization to be signed and ratified. We should fight for that. Convention gives indigenous people, and Garifuna people are considered indigenous within international law, the right to free, prior, and informed consent over their territories. It's not enough to just have people say pretty things. We need to fight for laws to protect our cultural rights, to protect our right to land, to protect our right to free, quality education. And so it's such a pleasure to have a conversation with people who believe in such things.
Thank you, Pambana. Thank you, Sister Therese. Thanks those who tuned in this morning. This show will repeat after Krem TV Evening News this evening and tomorrow morning after WB Morning Vibes. Until next Sunday, have a beautiful day.
Just say that you're naturally living to one of the troubles of everybody's home. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there. Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there.